All right, our next presenter is Dr. Gustavo Soberano, and I will tell you, he says his last name much prettier than I do. He is the Assistant Director for Animal Welfare Operations, and today he'll be talking about contingency planning. Please put your hands together for Gustavo.
Good afternoon, everybody. I get to give the last talk of the day, and hopefully everybody's awake. It's contingency planning, it's emergency, so hopefully we'll try to make this conversation, this talk, very, very fun, or at least not fun, but at least keep you awake. So just to introduce myself, Gustavo Soberano, and I'm one of the assistant directors for animal welfare operations. One of the things that I do as part of my responsibilities is to oversee the emergency management unit within animal care. And when we talk about contingency, we're talking about preparedness and emergency. So sometimes it's very difficult to put everything into only one little bucket, but we'll go through what the new contingency plan is and some of the things that you will be, hopefully it will help you to develop a good contingency plan. This is the docket, basically where you will find in the Federal Registry the contingency plan, but it's in the new blue book. So because this was actually technically in December 3rd, but it came into effect in July 5th, I believe. That's when we started with the contingency plan of last year. So we're going to be working, some of the objectives that we're going to be doing today is primarily defining what is, the definition. We are in the transportation symposium, so we're primarily going to focus on transports and intermediate handlers. But the contingency plan applies to every licensee and registrant that is part of, is registered with us. So we'll talk about many things that might not apply to you, but the reality is every facility, every licensee that works with us, licensee or registrants, they all use transportation. So it's important for you to know that, like how the contingency plan applies. And then, so we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the contingency plan, and then I'm going to go over what are the elements of the contingency plan. And we're going to repeat them and repeat them and repeat them again, because repetition is the best way to learn, according to my teachers. So anyway, definition. So we're talking about carriers and intermediate handlers here. So basically the definitions pertain to individuals in the US, basically anyone who is doing business within the US. So we have airlines, foreign airlines coming from other countries, but if they land in the US, they are included into this transportation. So we're also talking about, in intermediate handlers, all the facilities that are basically accepting dogs that are in transport. Either, we can talk about some of the intermediate handlers are the companies that are loading and offloading animals from carriers, but also some of the kennels and who are actually holding the animals temporarily while they are in transportation. So that is basically when we talk about carriers and intermediate handlers. And carriers, I think the definition is very obvious. We are talking about air transportation, like all the road transportation. And at some point we were talking about even maritime, like ship and other things that if they are registered, basically if they carry regulated animals, they will also have to follow into that definition. So, okay, so let's talk about what is contingency planning. And basically, when we're talking about contingency planning, we're talking about unexpected situations that are not your normal situation, an unexpected situation, but it's a situation that is, depending on where you are, could be expected. So, for example, I live in California. We expect fires because that's California. We expect that eventually we're going to get hit by some earthquake that is basically going to, the coast of California might fall off. So those are the type of things that we are expecting. If you live in an area where there is a tornado alley, you should be expecting a tornado. So you should be basically planning, you know, how to plan for an event that has the possibility to occur. If you live in the middle of Kansas, a tsunami is probably not a possibility, but you need to check about the other option that might affect your area. Now we're talking about transportation, and you're moving animals all over the US. That means that you have to be thinking about where are the animals going to be transported and what are the possibilities of this situation? What can we expect according to what is happening? I mean, we're seeing a lot of situations with climate, you know, and many situations where we were probably 10, 20, 30 years ago were not happening, but we're seeing them now. So we just need to be aware of that situation and be proactive. So when we talk about, again, contingency planning is, and you probably, if you have seen these names, all of them are contingency planning. I mean, the backup planning, adverse event, you know, disaster. All of us did these drills at the school, basically in elementary, junior, whatever school. We still do them. If you work in an office, you're still doing those fire drills. You're still exercising. So the part of the contingency is, one is planning, but the other part is also how do you exercise your planning? Because if you have the most beautiful contingency plan and you just basically archive it and you never see it, it doesn't matter, it doesn't work. You know, the first speaker today, he talked about planning and all the elements that go included into planning an event and how you do redundancy. That was one of the words that stuck in my mind from his conversation. All that is contingency. If something goes bad, how am I gonna resolve that situation? What is my backup plan? So we're talking about cooling systems, HVACs. How many of you remember situations, for example, in Georgia, like probably 10 years ago when it froze and cars were just stuck in the highway for 24 hours or more? Those are the type of thing that we just need to think, we need to be looking and consider. Now, if this is a one in a time event, probably will be really difficult to see that. But just this weekend in California, we were hit by basically a hurricane that was a storm. It was a tropical storm by the time it came to California. And as this is going on, we got an earthquake at the same time. So it was like, welcome to California. That's so basically, again, you know, those are part of contingency planning. So when we think about contingency plan, so what are we really looking into contingency plan from the point of view of the Animal Welfare Act? The reality is we want to preserve the health and safety of all our animals. We were talking about precious cargo today, again, using your words. Those are our, you know, we all have precious. We are basically responsible for the care, for the health of these animals. So the main situation with a contingency plan is primarily to think about those terms. How are we going to basically guarantee the safety of our animals? How are we going to guarantee that those animals are going to survive an event? And we're going to still be able to evacuate them if we need to evacuate them. If we're going to need to shelter in place, or if something is happening, how are you going to guarantee that basically if the HVAC goes off in a vehicle or even in a facility? I remember a couple of years ago, we were in a facility here in the state of Texas and the HVAC went off. And what was the contingency plan? What was the situation? How are they going to guarantee that in the middle of the summer, that facility is not going to overheat and the animals are not going to overheat. So again, that is part of, and that is basically the essence of what we think about with a contingency plan and the Animal Welfare Act. So a little bit of historical background, and we all remember Katrina. I think, let me see, I think all of you are old enough to really remember Katrina. Sometimes we talk to elementary school kids and they don't remember that, they don't know that, but all of you have heard about Katrina. And Katrina was an interesting event because the city had not prepared for the aftermath of the hurricane. So basically they survived the storm. The problem was not the storm. The problem was the aftermath of those levees breaking out and inundating the city. Many people had to basically either refuse to abandon their animals and basically had to be rescued, or abandon their animals and they left and they didn't have a contingency plan. They didn't have that plan. And it wasn't only regular people, also research facilities and many other businesses that had animals. So it was an event that actually made Congress work on the Pets Act, basically the Evacuation Act, but at the same time, tie that to some sort of, basically, you have to have a contingency plan in order to receive funding as well. That was one of the things in Congress. And animal care basically was in, that's when we started working on the emergency and basically contingency planning. So that is part of the history, but at the same time, we have seen over and over. I mean, we have our emergency unit. I can tell you that there's no month where we don't have an event that we are monitoring and checking with the different facilities that we have to see that they are okay. Basically, it is a situation where climate is changing and we have to be on top of that. So I think this is small circles, you have a good contingency plan is going to help the good health and good welfare of the animals, but it's also a good situation for your business. You have stronger business. You have a stronger institution if the welfare of your animals is good. So planning for emergency is one of those things that definitely that is the point of our contingency plan or contingency rule. So we're going to go through the requirements. So what is required? So there are specific points in the regulation that require for contingency plan. So just basically this language is straight out of the regulation, and basically we have to have, provide humane care of the animals in the event of an emergency or disaster. And there's that point, one which could reasonably be anticipated and expected. And that's why I was saying, most of the facilities that we have, because they are in one place, they know what they are dealing with most of the time in their area. Transportation is a tricky one because you're moving animals through all over the place. So, but this, you should be expecting, if you are going to be moving in the summer, you should be expecting that there is a possibility that you're going to find traffic, heat, HVAC situations, you name it. You are the expert in transportation, so you probably know better than us the risk, but you should be looking and thinking about that type of risk that you could encounter. So again, everything is basically to keep the good health and well-being of the animals. So when we talk about transportations, and so the other part is in relation to intermediate handling, because the regulation allows you, if you are an intermediate handler, allows you to be able to basically have a different facility, a different group, a different business to handle the animals. but that person has to have either you include them in as part of your contingency plan, or they have to have their own contingency plan. This is a question that they have asked us a lot, especially with transportation, because if you subcontract, the question is, do I have to have their contingency plan? And if you're subcontracting, my understanding is you don't have to have it, but the reality is you probably want to know that they have a contingency plan, because you are, at the end of the day, it's your business, it's your name, even if you subcontract with another company. So it's important for you, to also, know who and how to, what the other company is going to be doing. So the important thing here is that you can delegate another. Might arrange to have another person to hold the animals in the case of intermediate handlers, but at the same time, you are still responsible for those animals. So it's important that either they have a contingency plan or you include them as part of their contingency plan. So let's go through the rule. And at this case, I'm really going to be reading these slides because I think it's important to make a couple of points here. So July 5th is when it became mandatory, July 5th of 2022. And usually, I showed you the second slide with the docket. That was when it was approved, 180 days. So your plan has 4 components, basically. You need to identify when the plan is going to be in action. So that is the when. You need to outline the specific tasks that you're going to do. That is the what. You have to identify a chain of command. That is the who is responsible for basically performing the tasks of the contingency plan. And you need to address the material resources training needs, and that is the how. So those are, remember, when you're developing a contingency plan, these are the 4 points. When our inspectors come to your facility and say, okay, can I see your contingency plan? They're going to be looking that all those 4 points are addressed. And now, can you say my contingency plan is a one-pager, only addresses one possibility? You could, but the reality is that we have seen some contingency plan, especially from some of the bigger facilities, bigger zoos. There's a book. They have contingency plan for many, many different things. You don't have to have a book, but you have to account. So there is a form that I'm going to show you later, and you can use the form to actually fill up that contingency plan. And you can say, okay, this one is for fire, this one is for flooding, this one is for this one is for that, right? HVAC going off or whatever. You can actually do something like that. So the second plan, so this plan, as I was mentioning, our inspectors are going to be asking you for the plan, to see the plan. And when they go and do an inspection, when they go and talk to you, they will be coming and asking for that plan. Now, you should be reviewing that plan once a year. It has to be reviewed. You have to sign that you reviewed that plan. So that is one of the rules. That is the form that I was mentioning, the form, this 7093. That is a form that I'm going to show later on the slides. You don't have to use that form, but I always recommend to go over the form because your plan might be more complex than that form. But that form has the basic elements of what you need for developing your plan. And the other part of the plan is, or the rule is that you have to train. So everybody, every new employee has to be trained within 30 days. You have to train them on your plan. You do not have to document the training. You just have to basically have them trained. So you don't have to show us all the documentation. You just have to document that, yeah, employee John Smith was trained, right? If you make a significant change to your plan, you have to train everybody else again. You have those 30 days. So I told you we were going to go through a lot of repetition here. So we're going to go through the when, what, who, and how. So the first one is what. And again, this is language from the regulator, like this is basically the essence of what you are trying, you will be doing. So that language is directly from the regulations. And one of the things is that the example that you have to identify are what I was talking at the beginning. Examples and actions that are possible to happen in your area. So electrical outages, faulty HVAC, floods. I was telling you about California this weekend. So much fun with rain. In January of this year, February of this year, we also, again, California, we got significant amount. We went through a drought and then we went to the other side. We got so much rain that many small communities, they have to be evacuated. And those are the type of events that you have to be considering if those events happen in your area. So we have a lot of scar burns just from the fires. And if you're gonna get a big rain, mudslides are the next thing that are coming. You live in Louisiana and you're moving things through Louisiana, moving animals, you're going through that area and you're gonna encounter that your truck breaks down or something. Those are the type of things. So when we talk about, when do you need to establish or recognize a situation, that is the type of thing that we're talking. So what, how are you gonna do this, right? So you identify an emergency and you need to basically, and I know it's very difficult. It's very difficult to try to assess every single possibility. It's almost, I would say, impossible, right? But if it is reasonable, you have to identify it. But it's not only identified, it's also telling us what are you planning to do. So I was talking about the flooding that's happening in Central Valley, California. What are you gonna do with those animals? Are you gonna shelter in place? Are you in a high place? Are you next to a ravine? Do you need to evacuate those animals? Those are the type of activities that we need to know, basically, as part of your contingency plan. You're gonna be describing. If you are in a road, and we were talking about redundancy earlier, if you have someone get sick, who is gonna be driving the truck? If somebody, if the truck breaks down, what are the mechanisms that you have to guarantee the welfare of those animals in your possession at that moment? So again, that is basically what it has to be described, and it has to be reasonable. Obviously, we're not going to ask you to develop, to deploy the National Guard, but we will ask you to basically look at the plan and have something reasonable that it will guarantee the safety of these animals. So this is the who, and basically is who is in charge of exercising that emergency plan or that contingency plan. So many people, what they do is they put the names of people, basically. Okay, the director, his name is George. I'm gonna put George. But George leaves next month. Guess what? You have to change your plan again. So it's better just to put the director or the positions rather than the specific names. So that is one of the things, when you're talking about chain of command, is who is in charge, who is going to be doing what, and just basically a definition of what is going to happen. I don't know how many of you are familiar with incident management teams that are part of FEMA, but they have a structure of how and who does what. So basically, in emergency, when we talk about emergencies, and I didn't mention, I'm trained as an operations section chief. So IMTs come back into my brain every time. When we do any activity, we try to usually use, ICS, incident command system. So you could potentially develop your plan and into that structure, and develop who is going to be in charge, who is going to do what, and how are we going to address each situation. And the last part is, how are you going to do this? So in part is that training. How are you going to be training people? How are you going to be basically able to maintain continuity of operations? How are you going to recover in case there is damage to your facility, if you have a facility or is something? So basically that is the how that we need, So how you are going to obtain veterinary care if your truck breaks in the middle of the road and you have an animal that is sick? Do you have the names of the veterinarians, or do you have a contract, or do you have things like that? That is basically how you can actually develop and specify in your plan how to do this. So again, contingency planning is a living event. It's not you create your plan and you say, okay, I'm good with the regulations, I put it away and I don't see it again. Because when the emergency comes, I can tell you how many people, they don't even know where the contingency plan is. Sometimes we go to facilities and if the person in charge doesn't know, it's not there, or they have delegated to somebody else and we ask for that contingency plan, they don't know where it is. So it's one of those things that we always recommend and advise that people review those contingency plans on a routine basis. If you need to update it, update it. If you need to train someone, train someone. If somebody feels that I didn't get it, train them again. Definitely is the better we are prepared, the better this contingency planning will be. So training and responsibilities, so all new staff have, and whoever is in charge of there, they have to carry the provisions and they need to be trained within 30 days of hire. So if you have a new person, you bring at your facility, remember you have 30 days to hire them, to train them. And any change that you make to that contingency plan, within 30 days, you have to train everybody else again. But changes that are significant, if it is just the change of a name or something, but basically significant changes. If you change something that is going to affect how that contingency plan is going to be developed, then yes, you do have to train. And let's go through the form. I was mentioning to you here, this form is not a requirement that you use this form, but we advise that you look at the form and develop your contingency plan based on this form. So basically, they are the basic information, right? Who established this? What is the name? Your business, fund, business funds, and all those information. Section 2, it basically reminds you to maintain and document your plan. Every time you review that plan, just remember to document it. Every year, you're going to review that plan. You're going to sign that you review the plan. Now, who is responsible for developing this? You decide that in your facility. Doesn't have to be the president of the organization. You can delegate someone, but that plan has to be reviewed and signed on a yearly basis. Section 3 helps you to collect information. And this is information that is important because if you need information, if you are not present, but someone else is responding to that emergency, they have the information there, who to contact, how to do it, who is basically your local EOC, Emergency Operations Center, who is your veterinarian. Do you have a memorandum of agreement, an MOU with another organization that they might come and help? Those are the type of information that you should be documenting in your form. So, And also, we encourage facilities to post this list, just to have it available. Either you have it in a folder, you post it. So everybody knows who to call in case of an emergency. And so section 4, again, guide you through some of those emergencies. And what I was saying, you can use one and just list all these in one page. We recommend that you have sections. But again, as long as you have the plan, you recognize the main emergencies and you document how you're going to do it, you will be satisfying those rules. But at the same time, if you really want to have a good contingency plan, just develop sections and say, for fire, this is the case. If we have this other situation, with animal escapes, this is how we're going to address it. This is how we are going to do it. So it's important, and again, this form guides you through that, but that list is not inclusive. You can actually think about so many other different options. And here is, reminding to post who is the person who is going to be responsible for those tasks. And again, you can put the name. If it is your business, you can put your name in there if you want. But if you have a bigger organization that has a president, has a manager, has a veterinarian, has many things, you can possibly put the different charge. Instead of putting name, you can actually put the actual position who will be in charge of that. So with that, we have a lot of resources here, and I'm just going to go through some of the resources that might be helpful for you and to basically developing these emergency plans. And some of them, I'm not sure if we're going to share this presentation with all of you, but these are many organizations that they have developed contingency plans or emergency information. One of them is SAP, and actually we have a cooperative agreement with SAP, and it's the Secure Zoo, and they actually go through many things. And remember, we're starting this week, starting to regulate birds, and from that point of view, actually SAP has a lot of resources in avian influenza, biosecurity, and all those things. So all these resources that can be a good source of information for you as you are developing your contingency plan. We also have, Animal Care has posted, about the contingency plan ruling in our link, in the link over there. And again, I hope we're going to be sharing these slides so you can actually have them. If not, going into our website, you should be able to see how to find this form and the contingency planning and training. And the form, the 7093 form is also within the website. And if you look at your the little folder that you were given today, they are actually some of the tech notes in contingency planning. So at I think it's at the very back is where the contingency planning forms are. But these are also resources that will help you to develop a contingency plan for your organization. And our website also has some great information, a potential risk to plan for, especially with climate change. And we know it's happening, so it's a good thing to consider that situation. And I think this is another source, the ready.gov business, and this also helps you plan, and it's basically, this plan is primarily for the schools, families, business. It helps you also to plan and understand the type of emergencies that you might encounter. And if you have any questions, you can always contact us. I have my contact information, but also Chad's contact information. He's our transportation specialist. And he has given this presentation more eloquently than me many times. Okay, so with that, you have any questions?
Okay, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. For anyone that is joining us virtually, please ensure you put it in the Q&A.
Hi, welcome. I have a question about the form, and I've asked this question before and kind of gotten slightly different answers, but I'm going to frame my question a little differently this time. If you have your institutional contingency plan and it has a statement in there that during transport, you're going to fill out this form specific to the particular transport that you're doing, but it doesn't say in your institutional contingency plan what that is. It just says you're going to fill out a 7093 form for each transport that you do. Is that enough that you could use this form included in your transport shipping packet and have that specific information that's applicable, whether it's air, land, an employee taking an animal off-site overnight to a TV show, you're transporting an animal from one zoo to another, or you're hiring a commercial transporter and they're taking this form as part of that transport. Is that, does that meet the requirement for a contingency plan during animal transport?
So if I understand is, as your institution, you have your contingency, that is your contingency plan. And part of your contingency plan is that you are delegating that contingency for that specific transport. And that specific transport is going to have their own contingency plan. They're going to file their 7093 form. That should be enough. And I'm looking for chat. Yeah. And then in my assumption, you are specifying how, I mean, from the point of view of contingency plan, you are telling, this is what I'm going to do. This is the what and how I'm going to do it. What I will really encourage is that you fill that other form, because they will have their contingency plan and they will assess if they're going to go to a show. They will assess the risk during that show, and hopefully the contingency plan also addresses those 4 points. So in my opinion, it is good. And I got the approval.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, Karen, do we have any?
None at this time.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Hopefully this will be quick. If you have events that happen quite frequently where you have to use your contingency plan, we're in Texas, we have tornadoes. We constantly move the dogs in our facility to the center. We move our people to the safe room. Do we have to document that? Or is it necessary to document when you actually put the contingency plan into place?
Okay. So from the point of view of the contingency plan, our requirements is that you have a contingency plan. Now, if you're moving your animals off-site, I would recommend that you do document where those animals are moving, because we need to know that they are actually safe. And if our inspector comes and say, oh, you moved them, I mean, if it was for a few hours or if it was overnight or what was the situation, definitely. One of the things that we want to guarantee is that the safety of the animals is okay. So if you move them to another facility, you should let us know, because again, we understand emergencies, but at the same time, we also understand that you still have to be in compliance with the animal welfare regulations. So the facility, wherever you move them, they should be also in compliance. So as part of your plan, you can detail that and say, I'm gonna be moving my animals to this other facility that is this address, and you know that they are in compliance with the Animal Welfare Act. And so I would recommend that you do document just in case.
Okay, any other questions?
I do have some here. To follow up on the contingency plan during transportation question, Delegating the Form 7093 is the institution's contingency plan required to be on board the transporting conveyance as well?
So if you are, and I'm going to assume that what we're talking about is subcontracting, for example. Yeah, you have your institution and you contract someone to move your animals. That transporter has to have a contingency plan. Now, do you have to agree with their contingency plan? That is, they don't have to have your contingency plan. You don't have to have their contingency plan. I will strongly suggest that you really look at that contingency plan, because if the contingency plan is not appropriate, they are responsible for that transportation, but it's still your name, the one who is behind that, because you contracted them. So I will strongly recommend that you look at their contingency plan.
Okay, and Karen did identify that we did have one more that came in. We do have about 2 minutes, so let it ask.
Does the exhibitor need to report or document every time movement of the animals is done on the property due to tornado warnings?
Oh, that's a good one.
Hi, guys. I'm Kristen Napoli. I'm an AWO field supervisor. So when it comes to like disasters that actually happen, it's not mandatory, but we'd always, if you don't reach out to us, we'll be reaching out to you. If you're a licensed entity with us, as part of our job as emergency preparedness, we want to follow up with you, making sure you and your animals are safe. So if you don't tell us, we'll at least make our attempts to reach out to you. That's basically what I was going to say.
And one of the good reasons why to communicate and why to document it is that if you move an animal to another area and the animal gets injured, then we have to figure out why that animal got injured. Did it get injured because of the tornado or because the other facility was not appropriate? I mean, we don't know. There are so many different reasons. So definitely having that documentation to say, you know, there was a tornado warning and we had to evacuate and this is what happened, right? Just keep it as part of good practices. It's just good recording practices.
Okay, if everyone could give a warm welcome or a warm thank you to Dr. Soberano.